All right, we're back, and it is COMP123 in the summer 2016 semester at Centennial. It's week 8, part 2 of our broadcast. We're talking about exception handling today. We've handled a couple of easy ones, and again, this is the general form for exceptions, right? That's what it looks like. And here's some, again, in your book and on the PowerPoint slides, if you ever want to refer to this stuff, it always talks about how to do this. Now, the reason why this exception worked for us, because we're both integers and we're converting it to another integer. Either way, miles driven over gallons of gas is still going to produce mile per gallon of 0 for sure, because it's gonna. This is wrong, right? You can't convert two integers to make a float. It's not going to happen, right? Or to do whatever you're going to do there, right? So either way, you're going to get 0. So here's the generic exception. Exception is the class, and E in the book is what they use for the object. I don't like E. I think it's ugly. Let's call it what it is. It's an exception with lowercase. So one thing it does is the exception has a two-string override. And again, you can get a precise information about this by using the message. You can also go E2 string, and I use message, E message. The message property gives me the exact information about what the message is. Both ways work very, very similarly. So I'm not going to, kind of go over that too much. So this is the way I prefer it, E.message as opposed to E.toString. That makes no sense to me. E-message gives me the message of the problem that exists, right? Which is the better way to do it. So we've kind of handled that already, right? Multiple exceptions. This is kind of interesting. Sometimes what we can do is we can have several catches. This is an example, and we can specify the kind of exception we're trying to catch. An example will be divide by 0 exception. That would be the error type, right? The other one is index out of range exception, right? Somehow. So we can try that for in the first block or second block. Let's try that out, but this time, remember we did these generic exceptions over here. I don't know what kind of exception I'm going to get here. Let's invalid input, but then underneath this, just to be able to catch our exceptions, this is the way I would do it, is we need to know what kind of common exceptions we can get from the user, and then listen for those exceptions, right? It's almost like we're creating an event listener of a type, right? It's an exception event that we're listening for and we're responding to. Okay, so let's print out the exception. So I will say error. Actually, we'll just print out the exception, which is going to be the message. So now in order for us to do that, we have to have an exception class. So exception, then the exception that we're going to use. We're going to do the exception.toMessage, exception.toMessage, or sorry, message, a property that we're going to print out to the console, right? So error, invalid input, and then underneath that, what was the cause of our error? What was the error that we got? Okay. Let's see what happens now. So control F5, and again we have 5 and 0. Infinity, no error. There's no error there because we know they're floats, so that's not an error. How about one of these errors? Try that again. Oh, one of these errors, I said. So invalid input, and it says input string was not in a correct format. So that's an incorrect format. Remember we did that exception problem? That's one we could hunt for, an incorrect format exception. The incorrect format. All right, so let's try this out. So if I go back up to the exception list here, right, and it says thrown errors in arithmetic casting conversion operation, but incorrect format is what I got. And if you notice, if you look down here, is there one that shows me incorrect format? So argument exception, arithmetic exception, array type mismatch, right? Format exception. Would that be the one? Can I do a format exception type for the type of exception? So format exception, because remember we're talking about specific exceptions now, not generic exceptions. And if you notice down here, we have multiple exceptions, right? And then it says divide by 0. Can we do a format exception? Right? Let's try that out. So if I go back to here, could I put in stuff instead of this? I want to try and catch for format exception. So I'll start putting in this format exception. There it is, format exception, which is the exception. could do that. So if it's a format exception, right, instead of error invalid input, we know that we're not getting the proper value. We're getting some kind of weird string or something, and then we can't convert, right? So let's see what we get now if we just change this to format exception instead of just a generic exception, right? So Control F5. Ta-da. Input string was not in the correct format. Now we're getting more detail. It's a format exception, but input string was not in the correct format as we're getting. All right. So that's what we're looking at. That's the kind of error. But really what we're saying is when we get this format exception, we're not really entering an integer. That's what it is. So please enter an integer. What if I do the same thing, Control F5? What if I do 1.5? It says input string was not in the correct format. So even if I do 1.5 or something else, I'm still going to get that same value. Anything that happens, I'm not going to get the right format. And this is where I can, my error can be more specific now. I can say, please enter an integer, right? Because that's the kind of error that I want. That's the kind of input that I want, right? So please enter an integer. Please, error, please enter an integer. An integer. That's for any kind of conversion, right? But that'll happen for either one or the other. It'll catch an error, right? So that's the kind of error we can catch. I don't need the message, right? If I don't have to print this message if I don't want to, right? And if you think about it, if I want to, I can also do one of these, right? Like this. Now, notice if I have this, that means only for format exceptions, I'm going to print out error, please enter an integer. If for something else, other kind of exceptions, that it won't be caught here, right? Only for format type exceptions. Let's see if I can generate other exceptions. So Control F5. Let's make it so it's a very long integer, like this. Watch. Oh, you want an integer? I'll give you a long integer, right? Remember, I'm going to try and break stuff, right? So enter. Unhandled exception, right? What happened? System overflow exception. What? Stack overflow? No, I couldn't have done an overflow. It says the value was either too large or small for int 32, right? So it's got to be, this is another kind of exception. Remember I told you I was going to break your code? I'm breaking your code. Even though it's not a format issue, now it's too long. I'm trying to get an integer 32, but I'm actually entering something that's, something different than what I've asked for. All right, so what kind of error is that? If I go back to my little card, my reference card here, that's why it's important to kind of look at this, right? So is it an arithmetic exception? No. Invalid cast exception? No. Which one is it? Invalid data, invalid IO. It's not a stack overflow. It says thrown when the execution stack overflows because it contains too many nested method calls. That's not it. But it's definitely like it's too big, right? So it's not a format exception. It's something else, right? So what kind of exceptions could it be? Let's try that again. Let's see what the error is that we're going to try and target, because that's how we get the exception. Some of them are not even here. So I'm going to kind of Control F5, put a big long number like this, right? Here's a massive number, press enter, and you get this overflow exception. There's one. Overflow exception. It's not there, I don't think it's on my list, is it? I don't think it's on my list. Overflow exception. No. But it's definitely an exception we could if it's stack overflow, there's also overflow. So if it's an overflow exception, so here's the second catch, and I go overflow exception. Here it is, right? If it's an overflow exception, that means the number's too big, right? And how many numbers, like how big is an integer? How many numbers can it take? Come on, guys. You need to know the data type, right? So int 32, right? Is it 32 numbers? I'm just saying, 32 numbers, right? All right. Well, we'll check this out in a second. So we'll say console right line, right? Error. Number too long, right? Number too long. That's the error, right? So the number too long error, right? So we're not going to get a format exception anymore. So Control F5, right? So here's our long, really long number. So I'm not even going to look, see if it handles it. Bam, number too long. So that's a good way of catching that number, right? It's too long, right? All right. Let's add another number. Let's try it again. Control F5, and let's try adding in 32 numbers. So 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. You said 32 is okay, right? Enter. It's too long. How come? It's not 32 numbers, guys. Come on. You guys don't even know what ints are, right? This is programming 101, eh? So if you want to go back, if you want to look at the integer 32 type, int 32 C#, right? You can see what it is. So maximum value field, maximum value. That's not what I wanted. But first of all, we have to know the value of this constant is 2,104,000. This is the number. This is the biggest number. So not billion. This is like 400. So this is 147 million. So, you know, what is it? 2,147,483,647, right? So 2 billion, right? So if anything beyond this number, right, any from 1 to 2 billion, right, it's crazy. As it says here, the value of this constant is whatever it is, right? That's the maximum value of integer 32, right? So if it's larger than that, then we can tell you what the problem is. We can say this value has got to be smaller than. Let me give a specific number. So let's take this number, copy it, go back, and give it another error. Error number too long. And we'll say console write line. Please enter an integer smaller than. There we go. More specific, right? Right. And in fact, if I want to do that, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 digits, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 9, 10 digits. Okay. Let's see if that's right. 10 digits. We'll make it all. We'll make it all ones. That should suffice. So 10 ones for an integer, right? Control F5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Enter. Right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Enter. Result is 10.
That's still less than.
I know. I'm saying that works. Let's try this again. Let's try it again. See what happens. That was a wrong result too. That was a messed up result, right? Should be when we get it back, it converts to float, right? So it takes 1 to single, takes my numerator, converts it, takes the other one, converts it, and then notice that this is int, 2 ints 32, the defaults. I'm getting the very large numbers, 2 very large numbers, and I'm trying to divide them into a float, but float is a single precision number, so is something being lost? See, these are other kinds of errors, thinking errors, as opposed to you know, exception errors, right?
It still works.
10 twos? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Well, that's wrong. Something's wrong, right? Okay, it's 2 11 twos. Huh? 10 twos is too long?
Oh, sorry. 10 threes, sorry.
And too long?
Yeah, number too long.
Well, 10 threes for sure, but 10 twos should fail too, right? Let's try it out. So 10 twos. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Enter. Number too long. 10 twos definitely too long. But if I go 1, 2, and a bunch of ones, that should work, right? Let's try that out. So Control F5, because remember that's the largest number. 2, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's okay. And let's do the next integer like 5. We get some weird, you know, result, right? 4.22 e, you know, whatever. So here's something. If I want to format the result, how do I format the result? Do you guys remember? I don't want to just return any result, right? Because that's bad too, right? So if I go back down here, you know, when I console write line is okay, but this returns my return type is result, right? It's going to give me the big result. And when I print it out here, I have to be able to format it. And this is incorrect the way I've written it. What I should be doing is doing one of these, right? Where I have my argument that pops into there as a interpolated string, right? So here's my argument. How do I specify how many digits? Is it a comma? Is it a colon? You guys remember the format? If I go, like, I only want 2 decimal places, you know, as an example. Is that enough? Can I go 0:2? Comma? No, 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 no. I want 2 decimal places. Huh?
2 decimal place. I think it's like no, it's something else. I think it's something else.
Come on, man.
Hold on. Let me Google it.
Google it. Google it. I love it. If I do this, and if I press Control F5, right, and I go 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I put 5, and I get the result is 2, right? That's wrong, right? Didn't do much. In fact, if anything, notice what it did was it took 2 and put that in there, right? That's not right. So it's comma, and then how many decimal places do I want, right? How many movements? How many places I want to move, right? So if I put in like 5, right, for a thing, let's try this again. Control F5, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 5. Still get that weird number, right? So that's not it. Huh? What, F here? This? What? 5? F? F5? Like this? Come on, you can't do trial and error, man. Look at the right format string. Someone's got to look up the right. This is crazy. This is like, you know, Google at its best. Eh? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 5. That messes me up, in other words, right? That can't be, because I'm going to get the results going to be wrong, right? So let's leave it like this for now. You guys figure it out. Come on, you guys can figure this out. And then, so
I did 0:F2.
That's right.
So F2.
But I did F5, colon.
No, yeah, that one.
That's a comma. F2. All right, so now this is only 2 decimal places. Okay, let's try that again. Control F5. You know, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 5. And then, what do you mean? No, this is correct. This is correct. It's correct. You know why I gave me this? Because look, it's a big number. I'm getting like 2,100,000,000 blah blah divided by 5. Come on, it's got to be something like this, right? All right. Enough about dividing and all that stuff. Okay, so again, just to finish off this section, so for you guys to know what it is, remember that you have I'm catching 2 different kinds of errors. 1, that it's not an integer. 2, if the integer is too long. What other things? How can I make the integer too short? What about if it's a negative number, right? Well, would it be caught in one of these overflows? Because integer could be positive or negative, right? Like, I want you guys to think about, how do I break Tom's program, right? How about if I do a negative number that is like 10 digits, 10 twos? And number too long, because both ways, positive and negative, right? I can only go 10 digits, right? And I can't do 10 twos. I can only do 10, well, the first 2 and a bunch of 1s, right? For regular int, right? So that still catches that one. What about if it's some other kind of number, a negative number, you know, or I'm dividing by a negative number, or some kind of weird thing? Is there anything else I can do for something that's too short? I can't do any kind of 0.0. None of that will work, because that's not an integer, right? So I've already accounted for that. So is there anything else that can break my code? And I think we captured most of it. If it's not an integer, it'll come up, and if it's a really long integer right now, it'll come up. Okay, so that's that part. How about this part? So we have 2 try catches. Here's another one. This is a regular exception, and I'm having a problem only when, you know, an example is some other kind of division error happens. Something I can't capture right now. Right now, this program will work as is, but what if somehow I pass something else into the numerator and denominator that's not an integer, or it doesn't quite handle what I'm trying to put in there, right? What do I do? Because it'll accept whatever I want, right? Remember, I can pass in values. I don't have to do this calculation. I can pass in whatever I want in there, in the numerator and denominator, right? So some other kind of values in here, and you can test for those as well. Okay, let's finish this off. So again, what we talked about today was exception handling. And guys, the stuff I've shown you right now, honestly, it's enough. That's all you need to know for the basics, right? You can see that both types, when I'm one of the index out of range is for arrays. We haven't handled that because we don't have arrays to handle right now. But if you're sometimes index out of range happens when I try to go. This is a very common error for arrays, and because I'm giving you array help. Remember, one of those things is your array homework, arrays and lists. You may want to check for things like index out of range. What can happen, right? And this is definitely a very common one that we want to use. Divide by 0. We can definitely do this one, but it won't make any sense for us because we're using floating point numbers. So we would never get a divide by 0. We're going to get that infinity thing, right? And if you look through down through this entire option, one thing I wanted to tell you before you guys take off for the day, give me another 2 minutes, please, is the finally block, right? So try, catch, and then finally, right? Well, finally, right? This is the other thing. You can have try, catch, 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 catch. You can catch all these errors, and then you have a finally block, and the finally will always execute. All right, it's something that you want to do that always executes. That's part of that whole decision tree. If there's an error or not, right? Either way, you can have it so that it executes something in there, whether the exception occurred or not. All right. A lot of times what happens is when you go through the sequence, it's because you're handling some kind of file or complex data type or something else that you need to do some kind of cleaning up in the finally. Like you want to close down a file. So you open up a file, you do some stuff with it, and then instead of keeping the file open, right, and destroying the, sometimes if you keep the file open, you'll destroy the file that you've got open. So as a finally, sometimes in the finally step, we close the file down. Close all the files we just opened. Otherwise, the files will be destroyed whether you read them or not. Right? So that's something we want to try and do in the finally. No, a finally is like it always executes, whether you have an error or not. But like I said, sometimes what we do in here is do some kind of cleanup in the finally, a lot of times. All right? So some stuff to know. And here's a perfect example of that. If I've got a file IO exception, we're going to talk about more exceptions on Friday, right? The IO exception type. If I've got an exception, and if the file is open, then close it. Otherwise, it'll break the file. Right? We don't want that to happen. Other than that, I want to handle the rest of some of this stuff when we hit Friday, because at the end of the day, like it says, handling exceptions thrown from outside methods, right? We kind of already done that. We've kind of only put an exception in a method, and what happens when it gets thrown, how to handle that as an example. If it doesn't convert properly, well, we can actually put a try catch inside of our main program, but also have a try catch in the method itself, right? We can have a try catch that's included in the method. Any questions before what we've talked about? I mean, again, guys, this is a very easy thing to understand, try catch. And if I ever ask you something on a quiz, like for next week, how do I handle exceptions, right? What's the structure to handle exceptions? Try catch, right? Thank you so much. See you guys Friday. Remember, Friday we've got that assignment 3 that's due. Right, on Friday night. I'm hoping you guys have spent the time working on it to get it done. Otherwise, it's a bit of a bigger assignment than you've seen because you use abstract classes. It's the last part of that abstract classes and methods that we're handling. Thank you.